Yes.
Oh, I was born in England 71 years ago.
Okay.
And when I was about 2, my parents moved to South Africa. So I grew up in South Africa.
Ah, okay.
And where I heard about the Leeder School, I was in the drama department, Cape Town University. In my 3rd year, I was doing a postgraduate teacher training course. And Tessa Marwick, who was teaching us movement then, as part of our course for drama students, she put up this notice on the board. And we were doing a movement program. So every day I was dancing, moving, improvising. And I never felt so happy in my life, you know, as I did then, really. And she put this sign up on the board, and I was coming down the stairs and I saw it. And it was like, you know, in the Bible they say, and, you know, he felt it like a punk.
Yes.
It was like that for me. And I knew I had to go there.
Okay.
And I said to my father, I have to go dance, you know.
Okay.
And so I did. And my father said, well, you can go for a year. Because it was in Switzerland, in
Yes.
Hebbesau. And so, anyway, I did. I went for a year, and then obviously I stayed on for the 3 years.
Okay.
And I also worked part-time to be with Leeder, because he was the most amazing pedagogue. And I have had some wonderful teachers in my life. But he was a sort of Renaissance man. He could paint, he could draw, he could dance, he could make costumes, he could do anything, you know, in the arts. And I learned such a lot from him. But above all, I think what he taught me was the artistry of dance, which is something you don't get taught today. You get taught how to get your leg up. You get taught all these kind of scientific things of how physically to be perfect. But what's missing today in dance, I think a lot, and in the teaching, is the connection between the body and the soul, as it were, the inner. And Leeder very much started from the inside out. He always gave us a reason for doing something. So, and that reason gave us the quality of the movement. And that was what was absolutely wonderful. His strong point was not technique, you know, in terms of, you know, doing the splits or whatever.
Even if you had the technique class.
Even when we had technique class, what we did all the Schöpfen and Steuern. We did movements that were quite natural to the body, you know. All the different swings, you know, all the swings, you know, and all the possibilities that you had with the hips, using all the different movement qualities, you know, and that's what he obviously included in the etudes and everything, because we had technical etudes, you know, I mean, but the technique wasn't as a technique is today, you know, it wasn't try and get your turn out more, try and get your leg up higher, try and, you know, get everything stretched, and that wasn't his bag at all. And in fact, I sort of felt the lack of it when I came back to Cape Town, and and I was doing Luigi jazz technique as a kind of, I went to classes while I was teaching movement at the drama school. I felt I needed to know a little bit more about technique. So when you did a plie, you went over your second and third time, and things like that, you know, just for safety, and also so that I maybe could get my leg up a little higher, you know, because it never went up, and it still doesn't go up. But, you know, I think that sort of thing you can learn afterwards. I think that was special about Leeder, that what he gave us all was something that has nourished me all my teaching life. And I have taught in so many different venues and in so many different, with so many different kinds of people, you know, from drama students to dancers to kids in schools, you know. I've recently just retired from Irana community dance program in 200 schools all over London. We had 6,000 students on the program, you know, so, and we did lots of styles of dance, obviously, because there are lots of kinds of different people, and a lot of they like street dance, and all this. But the basic Leeder thing, how to use your energy, how to use your focus. So a lot of people, they just go, and kind of really want people to focus their energy and know what they're doing, why they're doing it, and to feel the dance coming from here, so that actually it involves them physically and spiritually, which a lot of the time it doesn't these days. Okay. Ask me something. Oh yes, I must tell you one thing. This is an anecdote. While I was at the Leeder school, I suddenly thought, I must learn more about technique. You know how you are when you're a student, you think you kind of know everything. So I said to Leeder, I'm leaving. I went off, I got on the train, I went to Paris. And I thought, I'm going to find a studio, I'm going to find somewhere where I can learn technique. So I went into this dance studio, and there was this guy with a chain around his neck with a big gold sort of medallion. And he was going to go like this. And I looked at him and I thought, oh no, this isn't what I want at all, And actually I went back to Leeder and I said to him, I was wrong. I said, I realize now what you are giving me. No one else can give me, and I'm trying to cry, and I appreciate it so much, because I realized that what other people were doing was sort of dance by numbers, and it's just a very different thing, when you dance with your being and when you just stick your arms and legs up in different positions, and that was a very important lesson for me, and I think wonderful actually that he took me back. I almost felt like the prodigal son or something.
He was not mad that you left and came back.
No.
Some teacher could be. But
because I apologized to him. I said I made a terrible mistake, and I've realized how valuable you are, and I had Leeder all the way through.
From what time you were in school? At what time you were
I
there?
must have been, when I went over there I was 21.
Okay.
I was born in 48, so there you go.
Yeah,
you can work it out. So I think I was very lucky. I mean, I think he was actually as old as I am now. He couldn't move so well, but he would just go, or something, and even without doing it, he could give you the essence of a movement and the quality he wanted, because his body just spoke, and because his thinking was in his body, and that's how he was. And actually, it's such a shame because he gave me so many schrift, of all the etudes and everything, and I gave them to the Laban Center here, the Laban Conservatoire. I took them all, and there must have been about that many, a lot. And he, before the Kugelkopf, he was working on the Kugelkopf machine, the ball, what is it called? It was like a little golf ball with the Laban symbols on it.
Okay.
And he was trying to work on that because he did everything by hand.
Yeah.
It was amazing. Anyway, so those things are at the Laban, at the Laban Conservatoire. I don't know what they've done with them.
Yeah.
I think the US Leeder method, or for me the Leeder method, what it is, it holds the kernel of understanding for all the arts. So I have been able to use his method to help me to understand working with actors. My husband's actually an actor. Working with dancers, working with total beginners and non-professionals, working with children, working with old people. Because what it has given me is given me the tools which I can use imaginatively in all these different situations. I have also been able to use his method, for example, the whole oikonetic thing. I did a whole study where I use color and movement where I've got the dancers to paint, and I mean, I've got all these little films and things that are made of them actually, painting and drawing to music, you know, and translating, movement into lines, and translating lines into movement, and all that sort of thing, you know, working with works of art, asking the children to interpret them. Obviously working with sound, you know, imaginative sound, all different kinds of sound, all different kinds of music. So I also, in terms of choreography, I've been able to choreograph different types of pieces. You know, it's like I don't have, I suppose my style may be, even if I'm doing more abstract things, I still require my dancers to think and feel what they are doing, and, you know, that kind of awareness. Just trying to think. So it's all these, and, you know, in daily life, actually, you know, it's the whole discipline has helped me. When I see people and I can read their body language, I can feel their energy, I can analyze their movements, not in the way I was very bad at love and notation, because I never knew where was front, you know. Yeah, it's. I mean, you have to be very analytical, and, you know, I am quite analytical, but not in the way that the notation requires. You know, you just have to have such a precise knowledge of the body and where you are in space and everything. And I suppose I'm a more feeling, intuitive kind of person, you know. But I mean, I think that's what his, his method has taught me, you know. And honestly, I have never ever been stuck for something to teach because of his method, you know. And if I had just learnt a technique, you know, because afterwards I did a Graham technique actually. And I mean, I love Graham, you know, all the feeling and the spirals, and, you know, I loved it because that also really engages your center, you know, in a different way. And I could relate to that because of the Leeder technique, I think, very much. But that wouldn't have given me the kind of breadth and understanding and artistic understanding of movement that Leeder gave me. And I think his teaching has enabled me to understand other things to a greater extent, and to understand, I don't know, artists, I suppose, and to understand, I don't know, how actors work and think, how musicians work and think, how when Ashkenazi plays the piano, he looks as if he's being transported and something else is happening inside. I think Leeder has helped me understand that, you know. And I'm ever so grateful. Well, I think, you know, if you think of the German expressionist dancing, I suppose one would think of that as a style or a way of moving, because when you look at it now, some of it looks quite old-fashioned. But why does it look old-fashioned? Only because now, you know, everything's kind of street dance, you know, and it's fucking cool, you know, do you know what I mean? So, you know, things do evolve, so it sort of becomes a style in a way. But I think the whole point was, say with the Graham technique, I can only compare it with that because I haven't done a lot of ballet, but ballet and Graham technique are both codified, aren't they? You know, like the Graham technique, if you do your pleadings, you know, they have special counts. And I know Jane Dudley, my teacher at the place, you know, she knew all the exercises, and we got taught them as Graham did them, you know, and so, and they were very codified, and Leeder would never have done that, you see. in that same way, I don't think. You know, he wouldn't say, oh, this Achterschwung, you know, has to be in so many counts or whatever, you know.
He could change or improvise.
Yes, I mean, I always think, you know, with Leeder, I always used to say to my students when I was explaining eukinetics, you know, how it can change the meaning of a movement. And I always used to take your arm, and up, I'm taking my arm out of my glove and down. Down, or you know, but unfortunate, or that, or you know, whatever. So the quality changes the meaning. Whereas if you're learning if you're doing ballet, it's tuck, breath, down. You know, you're not necessarily thinking meaning. Maybe you're thinking breath down. You know, so it's a kind of totally different thing. You know, and with ballet, you have to turn out. You know, you have to. Now I'm hopeless at ballet because I've had 2 hip replacements. But you know, the turnout is very important and things like that. And I understand because it's all about line and about beauty and perfection. You know, except when you get what's his name, Kenneth Macmillan's work. You know, is different. But of course, there are always exceptions. But you know, the thing about Leeder, he gives you the paintbrushes and the paint, and then you do it.
Yeah.
No, I've never been a big kind of company dancer or anything. You must remember, I was in South Africa.
Ah, yes.
There was no contemporary dance at all. So actually, I took over a studio and started the first, South Africa's first professional contemporary dance company called Jazz Art. And they're still, I don't know actually if they're running today. I think they've had a few problems. But yeah, that's what I did because there was nothing. You know, so when I went back after Leeder, I went back to the Cape Town University drama department, and Tessa Marwick actually asked me to take over from her, which I did. So I ran the movement department for 5 years and just worked with drama students, which was great. And why was it great? Because when they heard music, they didn't immediately go,
preparation and
yes, you know, they didn't do that. They just said, whatever they did, you know, they just responded because their bodies weren't trained and they weren't stuck in a rut. And that's how a lot of ballet dancers were. And in fact, I found that a lot of ballet dancers, because they're so used to resisting gravity, can't go, you know, they can't get that kind of
in the ground.
They can't relate to gravity in the same way. And I also discovered that after I'd been at the place, I went home, and we had a gathering at my old studio, and I was dancing because, you know, from the gram I was so lifted, and everyone else was going, you know. Because they were African, you know, and I'd lost it because I wasn't, you know,
pulled up.
Yeah, it was very funny. I mean, you know, it soon came back, but it made me realize then, with Leeder, you can do both.
Yes.
You know, and your body is prepared so that you can do both, and that's a very good example, I think, of a non-technique technique. Now that's interesting. You see, the whole central periphere thing with Viv, I think she understands it differently, because I remember having an argument with her once at the place about it, because when Leeder taught us, he talked about central and periphere, and not direct and indirect, which the Laban does. And the central, you know, always used to say, pow, pow, you know, it was, you know, the kind of like the jazz thing, you know, and the peripheral go, you know, and I think she understood it very differently, and I think his explanation was very clear, well, for me certainly, and that's the thing with the arm, you know, central, because I'm moving from here, or periphere, from my fingertip down. you know, it just gives you a different kind of feeling.
But I
That's
mean,
right. Well, it can be different. You see, I can go.
Yeah.
So here I'm central, and here I'm peripheral. Yeah.
So it's all
Yeah.
this mixture.
It's the colors. You
Yeah.
see, it's the colors, and that's what people nowadays don't get in their training. You know.
I know.
And I, I mean, it's so sad, you know. Because I think now, dance, because of all these things on the television, you know, dance, all these dance programs that are about competitions, it's all about flashiness, isn't it? It's all about spectacle.
Mm-hmm.
It's not about any kind of sensitivity, really. And it's a show-off, yeah. It's all about how you look. It's like how the world is.
Yeah.
It's very
Superficial.
yeah, I think so. And it's not really about telling stories, because people don't have the time to sit and watch. They don't want to be involved in that way. They just want to look at something rather than be involved in something, you know. And I think that's how dance used to be. It used to pull you in, and it used to say something.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, I can remember seeing the London Contemporary Dance Theatre do Scriabin Preludes. It was a choreography by Bob Cohan. And I remember watching that and just crying my eyes out, you know, because it was so, somehow the dancers were so connected to the music, to their bodies. Everything was like this, you know. And then when we saw them a few years ago, and a lot of the old contemporary London LCD dancers went to the place when it was all sort of renovated and everything, and they had a performance. And even Jane was there, Jane Dudley, my teacher, who was a Graham's assistant and danced. Anyway, everybody came out and said, we felt nothing.
Yeah.
Because, and they had beautiful second positions, you know, second position that I would just die to have, you know, flat like it. But it was just nothing, you know, and that's the problem, I think. Now they just flick, change channels, you know, it's different. I mean, it makes one feel very old, you know, when you say that. I do think that when people do see it, they are moved, you see. But I also understand that if you're, you know, doing this stuff on television and you want to get the most viewers, you know, if you can flip 6 times in the air before you and then land on one big toe, you know, that it is impressive, you know. But the trouble is that if you can flick 3 times and land on one toe, then they want you to flick 10 times and land on the little toe. Do you know what I mean? Nothing's ever big enough or spectacular enough. It has to get more and more and more and more. So we get further and further away from the sensitivities, you know, and that's a huge problem, I think, for the arts.
Yeah.
No, I worked with dancers because I had a
Yeah,
company.
you had a company,
I had a company, yeah, and I worked with. I mean, 2 of my dancers were very strongly ballet trained, so we sort of had to not break down, but free them from that training before they could actually be a little bit inventive, you know, and challenge them in different ways. We had at that time, you know, in South Africa there was apartheid, which is the separation of the races. So our company was the first mixed race company. So the dancers were from all different backgrounds. I mean, we had one guy, Edmund, who'd never danced in a class in his life before, you know, but he could move, and he was a real groover, you know. So I did things that suited his body, you know. I don't know, like he was king of the disco or something. I don't know, we did a children's thing, do you know what I mean? So I used people for what they were good at, and then developed the things that they weren't good at alongside, you know. I didn't say, oh, well, you're no good. When I did one show, actually, when the company was still just 2 dancers, and I had my whole studio, you know, I had, about 200 people come to the studio for classes. And there was one guy, Neil, I remember he was he was a chef, and he was very, very tall, and he loved dancing, and he wanted to be on stage. So what did I do? I put him in a bag.
Okay.
And and it was actually wonderful, because I made these bags, and of course when Neil stood in this bag and he went, bah, he was this wonderful shape, and then he did all these things in this bag, and then the critic, she accused me of copying our Nikolai. And I was really fed up, because I didn't even know who our Nikolai was. I just thought, I had a problem, so I just used that as a solution, and it was a great piece, and then I had the other dancers who could dance, in amongst all these shapes and things, and it was wonderful, and just to sort of John Cage type music, and it was a lot of fun. But I think that's what the Leeder technique helps you with. It helps you to think out of the box, because I have to say, when I was at the Leeder school, we were a real mixed bunch. There were 2 girls there who were like, 10-ton tessies, but he never turned people away, But also he just believed, that everybody, if somebody wanted to dance and they had dance inside them, then they wanted it to come out. And I remember this one girl, Sylvia, she was 27, and at that stage, and I thought, oh God, that's so old, But Sylvia did this little dance, and I remember she had her legs apart, and she went peeper, and she did something with her hands down there, and it was so, it was just wonderful. It was about a little clown or something. She had absolutely no technique, but it was magic, because she thought it, and everything she did was a genuine movement.
The intention was there.
Yes, absolutely clear, and she did it so intelligently and just with her whole being, it was, and I'll never forget it, all those years ago. I just remember it so well, because it was magical, Love. Nowadays, I like to go and see amateurs performing. I love to see children performing, Especially, I don't like them when they're wearing hot pants and spangles, and I can't stand all that, when they sort of trying to look like grown-ups and doing all this sort of, I don't know, sexy stuff, And that's a shame too, you see. That's how our children are being brought up. I suppose maybe it worked both ways, but all I know is that, he didn't just use one specific style. I think very much he used different kinds of music for different kinds of qualities, and this is what another. In our program that I was talking about is called Step Into Dance. Our teachers, they never understood that music will help you with the quality of something if you want a specific quality. They never understood the relationship between the two things, and that's a real problem. Because like the Regentropfen, it really helps you. I still remember how he had to really drop the hand in, and that's what Leeder understood, the relationship between the sound and the quality and the movement quality. Always, the music was always absolutely right. And that's why the music is so varied as well, and he uses music, and also not. I remember I did a thing called jazz impression to what is it, that blues thing? Anyway,
Something.
Anyway,
Gershwin.
That's right. And you could use anything, because that was a kind of, I did a sort of jazzy thing, because I love that kind of music, and I could feel it here, that was my natural, I suppose, an African sort of feeling in my bones. I don't know, that came out, I only used these things as and when they were appropriate. In my teaching, I've always, because of this training and this information, when I've helped people with their pieces, when I've given them themes to work on or anything, it is because of Leeder's training,
Yeah.
and my themes have come out of, chorotics. But I have sometimes taught the A scale, for example, just for the reason so that people realize, you can use all these different directions if they just become a bit three-dimensional or two-dimensional, so that they realize you can use the body in a more sort of plastic way, yes, and as the oikonetics, I mean, I've used that always, but again, not necessarily in a kind of obvious way, but with drama students, we've done the whole thing of, being different, using different qualities, and being this kind of person, and all that, and getting into characters or caricatures, and using different sounds and all that. So, and to create the sound qualities of the movement, yes, absolutely, yeah. What is the most important to me? I think what I can't stand is when people don't commit to a movement. And that really drives me mad. If
the
somebody,
intention to fulfill a
well,
movement?
if they just do it, they just do it like they're out to lunch somewhere, or they're thinking about
Something else.
What they're going to do tomorrow, when they're going to meet their boyfriend, or I can't stand that. So that's, to me, is very important. The other thing that's very important, and it's probably the same thing, is again the intention and the amount of energy or focus that they have. That's incredibly important. And the other thing, I do like and prefer that people have some sort of content, so they've got something to hang their movements onto, so they are, I wouldn't call it a crutch, but it's something that informs their movement to make their movements richer. That's important to me. I probably will go demonstrate, and they and they get a fright.
Okay.
They literally get a fright. The reason they get a fright, because they see all my wrinkles, and they think, wow, if she can do it. And they sort of are taken aback, because nobody has ever challenged them in that way, And I'm talking about now mostly about the students that we have in all kinds of inner city London schools, in the last program that I was running. They had never seen people execute a movement with total commitment. So they've only seen that on the television, which is over there.
And it's in two
and they're looking at it.
Yes.
They're not doing it and being it.
Yeah.
So I will say to them, I don't believe you. Do it again. Come on, and I also use just literal focus, and I'm quite challenging and very demanding. But it also depends on the student's ability. If I know, say, if I'm doing step ball change, I mean, I've had a drama student who couldn't do that, and for half an hour I was trying step ball change, and she finally got it right once, and I gave her a big hug. I said, that was great. Okay, so that's all she could do.
But she did it.
But she did it, so I celebrated that. Most students are lazy, because I'm talking about amateurs now. I'm not talking about professionals. They just don't know what they're capable of, and until you challenge them, and even with our teachers who are trained dancers, I mean, I often could do things that they couldn't do, because my body's quite strong, and I've always moved and done things. I haven't always been able to go to class, but I've always been to the gym, or I've always been physically active. And I found even they were a bit sort of wishy-washy because they haven't been trained like that, you see. And some of them begin to understand, but they don't have that thing, follow the movement, be the movement, inform the movement. To me it's so simple, but to other people it's not. It's not so obvious. So I mean, I do also work a lot with imagery, obviously, and a lot of them, and that's Laban does that very well. I mean, a lot of the students coming out of there, they use a lot of imagery when they teach, which Leeder also used. So imagery employs the imagination, which hopefully then feeds into the muscles and bones, So one just hopes, but that's the biggest bugbear I have, not necessarily technique or anything like that. So in that way, I'm one with Leeder. If somebody can really move and they enjoy it, to me there's nothing nicer, no matter even how fat or thin they are or without turned in or whatever, I think that really touches. And it touches more than somebody, who's sort of perfect, who has no connection. But I mean, I've been watching quite a lot of the Royal Ballet things, and I mean, it is beautiful. I mean, some of those dances are magical because, of course, they have everything. They have the connection, they have the technical ability, they have, and they understand, but they are really exceptional artists, an exceptional artist. Why are you an exceptional artist? Because you understand that and because you have that connection. Otherwise, you're just a normal person. Do you know what I mean? And some of them, they really are, and it's been really, because, but I think maybe, I don't know, has it got to do with the person and the person's capability, or, is a person born with that ability to understand? I don't know. Or can you teach it? That's the thing, you see, because I think some people, they just don't have that sensitivity, But I think you can try, and certainly I know I've managed with quite a few of my students that I've taught to the RAD summer schools and things, because I used to make little pieces. That was interesting, you see. I used to have like 5 different groups, say, different age groups, and we'd have to make up 5 pieces, maybe in a week, or maybe 2 weeks, and I never ever went in with music. I had a pianist, and then the pianist and I would create the music together, as we created the dance, and that was really scary. Because,
for you or for?
Well, for both of us, because we started with a blank canvas, and that is scary. Because a lot of teachers go in and they've worked out every single step, and on count this you do that, and on count this you do that. But I worked from what I got from the students, and I do the first class, just a general class, and then discover something that they did. Like in one class they came in, and they were all yawning because they were so tired, because they'd already done, it was the end of the day. So in the end, we did a yawning piece, and they all had their pajamas on. They loved it. And they had their hair, and they all started, But I mean, again, you see, that's later, I just used the material and then shaped it. And because they were allowed to yawn and be tired for some of the piece, for the rest of the piece, they could be quite energetic because they sort of went through that journey, and that I got them on side, as it were, and that's what teaching's all about, isn't it? Using what you've got. I always say, teaching is responding to need, because you look at your students and you think, well, what do they need? They need maybe energy, or if they need technique, but then you have to teach it together with other things so that it's balanced, not just this is technique. Now we're going to do technique. Now we're going to do, in boxes. you have to do an all-rounded kind of thing. I said, oh yes. I said, girls, why don't you take the music and go, and let the music go through your body, come out the fingertips, and fill your body with that music and dance the music. Instead of having the music over there like wallpaper and you're over here going through the motions. I mean, terrible, you know. I don't know. I think that it happens because exactly as you say, technique. This is technique. Now we do a little section musicality. This is musicality. Now we're going to stretch. This is stretching.
Yeah. Okay.
Ooh, now we've got a little bit of creativity in the middle. You know?
So everything is separate like this.
It's crazy, you know. And my teacher, actually, Jane Dudley, who was a ground teacher, she used to say to me, you teach the whole person. You know, it's organic. It's an organic process. And I absolutely agreed with her. You know, once I was at a summer school, it was in Italy, and I was waiting to teach my class, and because the class was still busy, and there was a little boy there with his mother, and she was waiting for her daughter. And this little boy was trying to turn, and he was throwing his arm, and he's doing it, and he loved it because he's getting so dizzy, you know, he was getting all dizzy. And I thought to myself, that's it. That's how you learn to turn. Yeah. You know,
you just go.
You just turn, and you get the feeling of turning, and then afterwards you can say, well, if you don't want to get too dizzy, you know, do that with do that thing with your head.
Yeah.
You know, it doesn't work for me, but anyway. Do you know what I mean? And that's actually how Jane taught us. Okay. You know, when we had to work with children or something, you know. But it's the same sort of principle, I think. With Leeder's work, because you experience the movement, you know, and then afterwards you can work out technically, you know. I mean, that's when it is useful to have knowledge of the body and those technical skills, you know. I mean, when my daughter was little, she's now 34, I took her to ballet class, and she had to wear all these little pink things anyway, and she looked like a little tub, you know, and all these others, the little stick insects. And one day she came home and she said to me, Mummy, I don't want to go anymore. All we do is just skip about. And she was right, because that's all they did. And they picked little flowers and they went, achoo, and you know, and then they had to do these silly little runs, you know. Oh my God. You know, that's not dancing. And that's how it starts, you see, because you're running like this and you're being all pretty and flowers and then your little, you know. It's, you see, I think what the conclusion that we are both coming to actually is that the way of teaching really has to radically change. And the trouble is, while dance is still a sort of university subject, which is a bit ridiculous, really. They have to have those kind of criteria, because otherwise they will feel that they're not being fair. So the sooner, there used to be a school, Hare Hills, in, where was it, in Leeds. And at this school, the woman who taught there, she just taught the kids to move. A lot of black kids in a very underprivileged area and everything, you know. And one of those boys, Dougie, I think he's still dancing today, or he's in the company up there. And he was just amazing. But he had learned how to dance, and he could move. And then afterwards, question why and how he was doing things or whatever, you know. And I think that's what people don't do anymore. They don't just dance because they need to dance. And so there's so many students that have been turned out of dance schools. I mean, I used to feel this because I used to run the choreography department at the London Studio Centre. Studio Centre. I'm getting mixed up. I've taught in so many different places. London Studio Centre. Anyway, and the choreography there, I think the choreography there, that was all done by numbers, you know, a lot of them, because a lot of them had a very commercial background.
Okay.
And this is the other thing, you know, that there's a lot of commercial dance taught. We need commercial dancers, you know, but commercial dancers also sometimes have to say things other than look at my body. I think he was teaching in a very holistic way, wasn't he? So you didn't just learn a movement in isolation. You learned movements that worked together and that said or were there for a reason. So nowadays, when you go to a dance class, people do you know, say in a gram class, you get something in the center, you do something in the center, then you do something across the floor, then you do your jumps, or then you do your turns, or whatever. You know, what he does it, he completes all those things in the etude. So it has a theme. So I think in that sense it's choreographed, of course, because you have to think about what you're doing and why you're doing what you're doing. But he just included everything in that umbrella, you know. And nowadays people don't do that. Lovely, because straight away what you're doing, you feel you're dancing. And I think that's the difference from doing just a sequence of 6/8 or something. It's sort of complete, you know, and it fulfills a criteria, whatever he set himself, you know, to work on. So it does make sense. And I mean, I quite honestly didn't teach like that. I didn't teach etudes because I found myself in different situations, which most people do. I think it probably works more if you're in a dance school, and maybe dance schools, if they taught more like that, then they would stop doing this, having things in little boxes. You know, it's like normal school, actually. I mean, when I was at school, I never thought that geography related to history, I mean, or that it influenced history, didn't enter my head. Because we were also taught little boxes, you know, and then it's only now, I suppose, in my later years that I begin to see, oh, everything's interconnected, you know. And I think that probably that's what the etudes do. They interconnect things, don't they? And you know, things like, even if you've got a link, if you've got to walk around or something, because some of the etudes, you know, you have to do some sort of pathway. You know, we used to have to think about how our feet touch the floor in that pathway, you know. So often when you're doing something across the floor in a dance class, it's usually, well, nowadays it's rolling on the floor. It's a lot of kind of big stuff. It's not, do you know, it's big, you know, impressive. So the dancers sweat and they really feel like they've done something, you know. And that's the difference, you know. Yes, because I think if you understand all the different principles, you know, and you really have got the kind of the kinetic stuff in your body, it comes through in your teaching. If you understand the use of space and how important space is, you know, and how space is your partner, you know, then it has to be part of your teaching. I mean, I just think it's very often, well, I know for me it was just instinctive, but because I've been doing it and thinking about it for so long and been using it in so many different imaginative ways, you know. I mean, I've used things, I don't know, with elastics, with, you know, all that stuff, you know, and it's, I don't know, it's like when you get it right, and it happens by surprise. And I mean, if I had been a brilliant dancer, I suppose it would have happened more often. I don't know. But it's like, as I say, the Ashkenazi playing the piano, when he becomes other. So when you really have that connection, you become other, and it's a wonderful experience. And I've also had that in a yoga class when I was standing on my head.
Yeah.
All of a sudden, I felt totally, normally you think, oh God, my shoulders are hurting, oh my neck, but I felt totally at one, and I felt light, and I felt like everything was going upwards, It was an amazing sensation, and strangely enough, it was on a day when I was very tired, so I had no resistance. I just allowed myself to do it. I wasn't forcing, I wasn't trying, I wasn't anything. And then it happened. And when I told my yoga teacher, Magnus Delabras, this was in Cape Town, she didn't understand. And I realized she'd never experienced that, But that's what I'm saying. Those experiences have made me understand when dance, when it really works, and when audiences also become, they become uplifted and they become involved, and that's when they become involved, not because you're doing 26, exactly,
True.
Yeah. Well, I think that's what I'm saying to you. I think, I think it makes you understand a lot, and although somebody like Jane would go, oh, German expression, because they imagined that it wasn't kind of technical enough in the obvious sense, which Graham was very technical, but it used to hurt me a little bit when she was like that, because I thought, well, actually you don't understand what it can give you, and that it actually helps you to understand anything that you do, and also the use of body weight. Well, of course, in Graham, like I told you, you're lifting up and you're doing all these things with the hips and everything and spiraling, but you're resisting gravity a lot of the time, and the Leeder thing helps you to understand that. Yes, that's right, and that's why, I think that's why Leeder always used to be more interested in movements that were more real and natural, as the swing is. Ballet now in the RAD, this is how they swing. Okay, for me that isn't a swing.
No.
Swing is
Free flow,
and that's the swing, and it has a pause at the top and drop, and this is, they call this a swing. I mean, I nearly go apoplectic because I say that is not a swing. I suppose what I've learned to do in my teaching career is turn everything to advantage. Even like the snoring I told you, and like the lack of energy, because they just didn't know how to let go. Yeah, I think you've probably asked me main things, because I talk quite easily, so I've probably got most things off my chest.